The robot that wasn't so simple. Ethan stood in the middle of the crowded junk market, looking at the pile of broken machines. Rusted metal, old wires, and broken circuits were everywhere. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. He wasn't here for fun. He needed cheap parts for his workshop. An old vendor with a wrinkled face and a long beard waved at him. "You looking for something special, boy?" the man asked. Ethan shrugged. "Just parts. Maybe a cheap robot I can fix." The old man grinned and pointed to a large, dented metal robot sitting in a corner. Its body was covered in dust, and its joints were stiff. "This one," the vendor said, "looks broken, but it's different." Ethan frowned and walked closer. The robot looked old, like it hadn't moved in years. Its design was strange, more advanced than anything he had seen before. He wiped some dust off its surface and noticed strange alien symbols carved into the metal. "How much?" Ethan asked. The old man leaned in and whispered, "Listen, kid. This is no ordinary robot. Take it, but be careful. It might change your life." Ethan laughed. "It's just a broken machine." He paid a few credits, loaded the robot onto his small hover cart, and took it home. A strange discovery. Ethan's workshop was a small, messy room filled with tools, half-finished projects, and blinking computer screens. He placed the robot on his workbench and sighed. "All right, let's see what's inside you." He grabbed his screwdriver and opened the robot's chest panel. To his surprise, the inside wasn't like any machine he had ever seen. Instead of wires and circuits, there were soft, glowing tubes running through the body, almost like veins. A faint humming sound came from within. Ethan blinked. Weird. Before he could inspect further, the robot suddenly twitched. Ethan jumped back, his heart pounding. The robot moved again, its head tilting slightly. Its eyes, which had been dark before, now glowed a deep shade of blue. Then, something impossible happened. The metal around the robot's body shifted, peeling away like a shell breaking open. Beneath the metal wasn't a machine. It was skin. Soft, smooth skin with a slight bluish tint. The robot's entire form changed. The stiff metallic frame morphed into the shape of a girl. Her long silver hair flowed down her shoulders, and her glowing blue eyes stared straight at Ethan. Ethan stumbled backward, knocking over a toolbox. "What the?" The girl blinked a few times, stretched her arms, and then smiled. "You saved me," she said in a soft voice. "I belong to you now." The girl who wasn't a robot. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't possible. He had bought a robot, not a person. "Who? What are you?" he finally asked, his voice shaky. The girl stepped down from the workbench, moving gracefully. Her glowing blue eyes never left him. "My name is Lena," she said. "I am not a robot. I was hiding." Ethan gulped. Hiding? From what? Lena looked around the room as if searching for something. Then, she looked back at Ethan with a small smile. "You are human, right?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, of course." Lena's smile grew wider. "Good. I always wanted a human protector." Ethan took a deep breath. "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but I think there's been a mistake. I just wanted a machine to fix. Not." Before he could finish, Lena suddenly stepped closer. She placed a hand on his chest, and her eyes glowed brighter. Ethan froze. His heart pounded. Lena's voice was calm but serious. "You saved me. That means, by my people's law, I belong to you now." Ethan's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Before he could argue, a loud beeping sound filled the workshop. Ethan turned to look at his computer screen. A warning message flashed in bright red. ALERT. Unknown Signal DTHCTD. Tracking system active. Lena's face suddenly turned pale. "They found me," she whispered. Ethan stared at her. "Who?" Lena grabbed his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "We need to leave. Now." Ethan looked at the screen again. The red warning message blinked rapidly. Then, a loud knock came at the door. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Someone was outside, and they were looking for Lena. The truth about Lena. Ethan's heart pounded as the loud knocking continued. Whoever was outside wasn't friendly. The warning signal on his computer screen still flashed red, showing an unknown tracker signal. Lena gripped his wrist tightly, her glowing blue eyes filled with urgency. "They found me," she whispered. "We have to go. Now." Ethan yanked his hand back. "Wait, wait. Who found you? What are you even talking about?" Lena's expression hardened. She turned toward the door, pressing her hand against the wall. The metal shifted beneath her fingers like liquid, sealing the entrance with an invisible lock. A deep voice growled from the other side. "We know you're in there. Open up, or we break in." Ethan's stomach twisted. This was real. Someone was after Lena, and if he didn't act fast, they were both in danger. The hidden truth. Lena spun toward him. "Listen, Ethan, I don't have time to explain everything, but I am not just some alien girl. I was disguised as a robot to escape my enemies." Ethan crossed his arms. "And those guys outside, your enemies?" Lena nodded. "Bounty hunters. Very dangerous ones." Ethan stared at her. "Why are bounty hunters after you? What did you do?" Lena hesitated. Then she exhaled and lifted her hand toward the ceiling. A small blue orb formed in her palm, glowing softly. "I am not an ordinary person. I am a princess." Ethan's jaw dropped. "A princess? Seriously?" She nodded. "Not just any princess. My father is the ruler of the Elith Empire, one of the strongest alien civilizations in the galaxy." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This was too much. He had gone from buying a broken robot to hiding a runaway alien princess in just a few hours. "Okay," he said slowly. "Then why are you running? If your dad is so powerful, shouldn't you be, I don't know, safe in a palace somewhere?" Lena's gaze darkened. "My father isn't the problem. It's my people. The Empire is at war, and some high-ranking officials want to use me as a weapon." Ethan's blood turned cold. "A weapon? What does that even mean?" Lena clenched her fists. "I have powers, abilities that most Elith don't have. If I fall into the wrong hands, I could be forced to destroy entire planets." Ethan stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. The knocking at the door grew louder. Then, a loud crash. Ethan snapped back to reality. The bounty hunters were trying to break in. Escape plan. Lena grabbed Ethan's arm. "We can't stay here. Do you have a ship?" Ethan hesitated. "Yeah, but it's old. It barely works." "It's better than nothing." Lena pulled him toward the back of the workshop, where a dusty metal door led to his underground hangar. As Ethan punched in the security code, he heard the front door slam open. "They're inside," Lena whispered. The door finally unlocked, and Ethan shoved Lena inside, sealing it behind them. The underground hangar was dark, filled with old tools and half-finished machines. In the center of the room sat his ship, an old beat-up Starhopper-class cruiser. It had scratches all over its hull, and one of its landing gears was held together with duct tape. Lena frowned. "This is your ship?" "Hey, it still flies," Ethan muttered, running toward the cockpit. Lena leaped onto the ship with unnatural speed. Just as Ethan was about to climb in, the door behind them exploded. The bounty hunters stormed in. 3 of them, all tall and covered in thick armor. One had red cybernetic eyes, another carried a large plasma rifle, and the third was almost twice Ethan's size. "There she is," the leader growled. Ethan jumped into the cockpit, slamming his hand onto the ignition. Come on, come on." The ship hummed to life, its engine sputtering. Lena extended her hands, and a wave of energy pushed the bounty hunters back for a moment. One of them fired a blast at the ship, barely missing. Ethan yanked the controls, and the ship lifted off, rocketing through the underground tunnel and into the sky. The chase begins. The ship shook violently as Ethan steered it into the atmosphere. Lena's breathing was heavy, her hands glowing faintly. "You okay?" Ethan asked, his hands gripping the controls. Lena nodded. "We're not safe yet." The ship's radar flashed red. The bounty hunters had ships, and they were following them. Lena turned to Ethan. "Can you fly fast?" Ethan smirked. "You have no idea." He slammed the thrusters, sending the ship into a high-speed chase through the stars. The bounty hunters were right behind them, firing plasma bolts. Lena's fingers moved quickly over the ship's console. "I can jam their sensors, but it won't last long." "Do it," Ethan shouted, dodging another blast. Lena's eyes glowed bright blue, and the ship's systems hummed with energy. A burst of static filled the radar screen. "It worked," Lena said. "We lost them." Before she could finish, a massive shadow loomed over them. A huge battleship appeared from hyperspace, blocking their path. Ethan's stomach dropped. "What the hell is that?" Lena's face paled. "That's an Imperial warship." Ethan swallowed hard. "And let me guess, it's not here to help us." Lena looked at him, her expression serious. "If they capture me, they'll kill you." Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "Not happening." He turned the ship hard, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. The Imperial warship fired. A massive energy beam barely missed them. Lena looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with something new. "Trust. You're different from other humans," she said. "You don't run away." Ethan smirked. "Yeah, well, I like my life. And right now, staying alive means keeping you safe." Lena's gaze softened. "Then let's survive together." The ship plunged into the asteroid field, with Imperial ships and bounty hunters close behind. The hunter arrives. Ethan's hands were steady on the controls, but his heart raced. The Imperial warship loomed behind them, its massive structure blocking out the stars. Red warning lights flashed across the ship's console. The bounty hunters were still in pursuit, and now they had the full force of the Elith Empire on their backs. Lena sat beside him, her glowing blue eyes fixed on the screen. Her face was tense, but she wasn't panicking. She was thinking, calculating. "We can't outrun them forever," Ethan said. Lena nodded. "We don't have to. We just need to lose them in the asteroid field." Ethan glanced at the dense field of floating rocks ahead. "You do realize flying through there is basically suicide, right?" Lena smirked. "Only if you're a bad pilot." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Great. No pressure." The bounty hunter ships closed in, their weapons locking onto them. A warning alarm blared through the cockpit. Target locked. Lena's fingers danced across the control panel, disabling the tracking signal. "This will buy us a few seconds. Go." Ethan didn't hesitate. He pushed the throttle to full power, sending the ship diving straight into the asteroid field. The chase through the asteroids. Massive rocks spun in every direction. Some were as small as pebbles, others the size of entire cities. Ethan swerved, weaving between the floating debris. The bounty hunters followed, their sleek ships cutting through the field with deadly precision. Laser blasts zipped past them, barely missing the hull. "Can't you just zap them away with your powers?" Ethan asked, gritting his teeth as he narrowly avoided a collision. Lena shook her head. "I can disable their weapons, but it takes time." "We don't have time." One of the enemy ships fired a plasma torpedo. Ethan twisted the controls, sending the ship into a wild spin. The torpedo missed, but barely. Lena suddenly reached out, her eyes glowing bright blue. A shockwave of energy pulsed from her body, spreading out in all directions. The bounty hunters' ships flickered, their systems glitching. Their engines stuttered, and for a brief moment, they stopped moving. Ethan's jaw dropped. "Okay, that was awesome." Lena exhaled, her face pale. "It won't last long." We need to land somewhere safe. Ethan scanned the radar. A small deserted moon appeared on the screen. That'll do. He angled the ship toward the moon's surface, pushing the thrusters as hard as they could go. Behind them, the bounty hunters' ships recovered. We're not done yet, Lena muttered. Crash landing. The ship broke through the moon's thin atmosphere, fires streaking across its hull. The landing gear malfunctioned, and Ethan gritted his teeth as he struggled to stabilize the descent. The ground rushed toward them. Boom! The ship skidded across the rocky terrain, metal screeching against the ground. Dust and debris exploded into the air. The ship came to a violent stop, the front half buried in the dirt. Ethan groaned, rubbing his forehead. Well, that sucked. Lena coughed and unbuckled herself. We need to move. Ethan looked at the monitors. The bounty hunters' ships had landed less than a mile away. They're coming, he said. Lena grabbed a small device from the control panel, a holographic disguise emitter. She pressed a button, and her blue skin faded to a human tone. Her glowing eyes dulled into a deep brown. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Neat trick. It won't fool them up close, she said. Let's go. Hunted. They climbed out of the wreckage, their boots crunching against the dry, cracked ground. The sky above was a dark shade of blue, the two suns of the system casting an eerie glow. Strange rock formations towered around them, giving them some cover. In the distance, three figures moved through the dust storm. The bounty hunters. Ethan grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her behind a large boulder. They'll track our footprints, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Then we need to make them think we went somewhere else. He spotted a narrow canyon leading deeper into the moon's rocky landscape. It was dangerous, but it might be their only chance. This way, he said. They ran. The wind howled around them, carrying the distant clanking of armor and the low hum of energy weapons being powered up. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. The bounty hunters were moving fast. They're getting closer, he whispered. Lena's eyes flickered with a hint of blue. Then let's make this interesting. She stopped running, turned around, and raised her hand. The air around them shimmered. A wave of energy pulsed outward. Ethan felt a strange pressure in his chest, like the gravity had shifted. The bounty hunters suddenly staggered, their weapons flickering. One of them stumbled to his knees, clutching his helmet. Lena grabbed Ethan's wrist. Now we run. They sprinted through the canyon, leaving the confused bounty hunters behind. A moment of truth. After what felt like hours, they finally stopped in a small cave, hidden deep in the canyon. Ethan collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. I'd really need to get in better shape. Lena chuckled, sitting beside him. You did well. He looked at her, studying her face. Lena, are you always running like this? She hesitated. Then she nodded. Ever since I escaped. Ethan exhaled. And now I'm part of this mess. She met his gaze, something soft and unspoken passing between them. I didn't ask you to save me, but I'm glad you did. Ethan smirked. Yeah, well, I had nothing better to do. Lena smiled. For a moment, there was peace, just the two of them, hidden from the world. But it wouldn't last. Outside the cave, the shadows of the bounty hunters grew closer. They had been found. Escape to the stars. Ethan's chest rose and fell heavily as he leaned against the cave wall, catching his breath. His hands were scraped, his muscles burned, and his mind screamed at him for getting tangled up in something so dangerous. He was just a mechanic, a nobody. Yet here he was, hiding in a cave with an alien princess, while some of the deadliest bounty hunters in the galaxy hunted them. Lena sat across from him, her glowing blue eyes flickering in the dim light. She looked calm, but Ethan could tell her mind was racing. Outside the cave, the bounty hunters moved carefully, their heavy boots crunching against the rocky surface. Their energy rifles hummed softly, scanning for any trace of movement. Ethan swallowed hard. They were trapped. Lena shifted closer, whispering, I can take them down. Ethan shot her a look. What, by using your space magic again? You nearly passed out last time. She exhaled sharply. It's not magic. It's... A loud metallic clank echoed outside. The hunters had dropped a tracking drone. A thin red laser swept across the cave entrance, scanning for life forms. Lena's expression darkened. They'll find us in seconds. Ethan tightened his grip on his blaster, though he knew it was useless. These guys wore reinforced armor. One lucky shot wouldn't take them down. We need a distraction, he whispered. Lena nodded. Leave that to me. Outrunning death. Without warning, Lena leaped from cover. She extended her hand, and a powerful energy pulse exploded outward, slamming into the nearest bounty hunter. The force sent him flying into a rock wall with a loud crash. The second bounty hunter spun around, lifting his rifle. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a small explosive device from his belt and threw it at the ground near their feet. A cloud of blinding white smoke erupted, covering their escape. Move, Ethan shouted. Lena sprinted ahead, and Ethan followed, dodging blaster fire as the bounty hunters fired blindly into the smoke. The ground exploded behind them, rock shards slicing through the air. The cave passage twisted ahead, leading them toward an open valley. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. A blockade of bounty hunter ships waited for them. At least 6 heavily armed ships hovered above the rocky terrain, their cannons aimed directly at them. Ethan skidded to a stop. We're dead. Lena grabbed his hand. Not yet. She raised her other hand, her eyes burning bright blue. The air around them rippled, and for a split second, time seemed to slow. Then, boom. A massive shockwave erupted from Lena's body, knocking several of the enemy ships backward. Some spun out of control, crashing into the cliff sides. The remaining bounty hunters stumbled, trying to regain their footing. Ethan didn't waste time. He grabbed Lena's wrist. Come on, the ship's not far. They bolted toward the crash site, where Ethan's damaged Starhopper-class cruiser still lay buried in the dirt. Ethan's mind raced. The ship was barely holding together. Could it even fly? The bounty hunters were already recovering. One of them lifted a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher, aiming straight at them. Ethan threw himself at Lena, knocking her to the ground just as the missile screamed past them. It exploded against a nearby rock, sending a shockwave of heat over their heads. We're sitting ducks out here, Ethan shouted. Lena groaned, pushing herself up. We just need to get inside. They scrambled toward the ship. Ethan slammed his fist against the emergency override panel, forcing the boarding ramp to creak open. They tumbled inside as another explosion rocked the ground behind them. The Starhopper's last flight. Ethan sprinted to the cockpit, flipping switches and pulling levers. The ship groaned, its damaged thrusters sputtering to life. Lena collapsed into the co-pilot's seat. I'll reroute power to the shields, she said breathlessly. Ethan's hands moved fast, desperately recalibrating the flight systems. Outside, the bounty hunter ships lifted off, circling them like vultures. Ethan gritted his teeth. I hope you believe in miracles. With one final pull of the controls, he punched the thrusters to full power. The ship lurched upward, engines coughing and sputtering. For a terrifying moment, Ethan thought it was going to stall. Then, the thrusters ignited fully, and they rocketed toward the sky. The bounty hunters opened fire. Blaster bolts rained down on them, slamming against the ship's weak shields. The cockpit flashed red, warning alarms screaming. Lena's hands hovered over the console. Hold on, I can boost the shields, but only for a few seconds. Ethan gripped the flight stick tightly. Then make it count. Lena closed her eyes, and the ship hummed with energy. The blue pulse rippled across the hull, reinforcing the shields. Ethan took the chance. He pulled back hard on the controls, sending the ship into a sharp vertical climb. The bounty hunters tried to follow, but Ethan knew his ship better than anyone. He twisted the controls, sending the Starhopper into a wild, unpredictable spin. Their pursuers couldn't keep up. One bounty hunter ship crashed into an asteroid, exploding on impact. Another fired a last desperate shot, but Lena's energy shields deflected it just in time. Within seconds, they broke through the planet's atmosphere, leaving the bounty hunters behind. A brief moment of peace. Ethan slumped back in his seat, his entire body trembling. We made it. Lena exhaled slowly. For now. The stars stretched endlessly before them, the vastness of space suddenly feeling a lot quieter. Ethan turned to her. Okay, I need answers. Why do bounty hunters want you so badly? Lena hesitated. Then she spoke softly. Because I'm more than just a runaway princess, she admitted. I'm the heir to a lost secret, a weapon so powerful, entire civilizations fear it. Ethan stared at her. You're telling me you've been carrying a galaxy-shattering secret this whole time? She gave him a small, tired smile. Now you see why I needed a protector. Ethan exhaled sharply. Yeah, well, next time. Maybe warn me first. Lena chuckled. I'll try. Their ship drifted through space, battered but still standing. But they both knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire wouldn't stop hunting her. The bounty hunters wouldn't give up. And somewhere, in the deep void of space, something far worse was coming for them. A new home, or a new danger. The Starhopper-class cruiser drifted through the void, battered but alive. Sparks flickered from the damaged control panels, and the ship's hull groaned under the stress of its last escape. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, gripping the flight stick like his life depended on it. Because it had, just minutes ago. Lena sat beside him, staring at the infinite stars ahead. Her expression was distant, her thoughts elsewhere. Ethan exhaled. So just to be clear, you're telling me you're not just a princess, but the key to some galactic weapon. Lena nodded. Not a weapon. A force. A power that's been lost for centuries. A power that some believe I can unlock. Ethan rubbed his face. Great. Because being chased by bounty hunters and an imperial warship wasn't stressful enough. Lena gave him a tired smile. You're still here, though. Ethan glanced at her. Yeah. Well, I've already almost died like, what? 3 times today. Might as well see where this all leads. A soft beeping interrupted them. Ethan turned to the navigation screen. All right, we need a place to lay low. Fast. He pulled up a list of habitable planets nearby. One caught his attention, Vexa 9. Lena frowned. That's an outlaw world. Exactly, Ethan said. No imperial patrols. No security scanners. Just a bunch of criminals minding their own business. If we're lucky, no one will even notice us. Lena sighed. Or we land in the middle of a war zone. Ethan smirked. Then let's hope they like new visitors. He engaged the hyperdrive. The stars stretched into streaks of white, and they vanished into the void. Welcome to Vexa 9. The moment the ship dropped out of hyperspace, Ethan regretted his decision. Vexa 9 wasn't just an outlaw world, it was chaos. Massive rusted space stations floated in orbit, half of them covered in pirate flags. Below the planet's surface was a sprawling wasteland of neon-lit cities, criminal fortresses, and smoky industrial complexes. Gunfire and explosions flashed in the distance. Lena arched an eyebrow. Yeah, this looks real peaceful. Ethan grimaced. Well, at least no one's shooting at us. Yet. A robotic voice crackled over the ship's communicator. Unregistered vessel, state your business. Ethan hesitated. Oh, we're just passing through. Need a place to refuel. A long pause. Then. Landing pad 32 is open. No trouble, or you'll be scrap. Ethan let out a breath. Friendly place. Lena's expression remained tense. Stay close to me. We don't know who might recognize me. Ethan guided the Starhopper toward the surface, weaving between towering skyscrapers and smoking industrial stacks. The landing platform was located in a crowded market district, surrounded by neon-lit bars, tech vendors and groups of shady individuals exchanging stolen goods. Ethan powered down the engines. The ship groaned as it settled. "Well," he said, standing up, "let's go make some new friends." Trouble in the market. The moment they stepped outside, Ethan could feel the weight of 100 eyes watching them. The streets of Vexenine were filled with mercenaries, thieves, and smugglers, each one sizing them up. Lena pulled the hood of her jacket over her head, hiding her glowing blue eyes. They walked toward a fuel station, passing vendors selling alien weapons, illegal cybernetic upgrades, and exotic pets in cages. Ethan leaned toward Lena. "I love how literally everyone here looks like they'd stab us for a sandwich." Lena didn't laugh. "Stay focused." As Ethan spoke to a grumpy-looking alien mechanic, Lena's gaze drifted to a massive holographic screen overhead. A wanted poster flashed onto the screen. Her face appeared. "Princess Lena of the Elith Empire. Bounty. 1.5 million credits." Lena's breath caught in her throat. A group of heavily armed thugs nearby noticed the poster. Then they looked at her. Lena grabbed Ethan's arm. "We need to go. Now." Ethan frowned. "What?" Then he saw the bounty. Oh, crap. The thugs started moving toward them, weapons ready. Fight or flight. Ethan shoved a crate onto the nearest thug, sending him crashing backward into a food stall. "Run," he shouted. They sprinted through the market as blaster fire erupted behind them. People screamed, knocking over tables as customers and vendors scrambled for cover. Lena ducked behind a metal pillar, pressing her hand to her temple. A blue glow flickered around her body. "Buying us time," she muttered. Ethan glanced over. "What does that mean?" Suddenly, half the lights in the market short-circuited, plunging the area into darkness. The thugs hesitated, disoriented. Ethan grabbed Lena's hand. "Nice trick. Now let's get the hell out of here." They bolted down an alleyway, dodging through the maze of pipes and vents. Behind them, the thugs shouted orders, their voices growing closer. Lena's breathing was sharp. "We can't outrun them forever." Ethan gritted his teeth. "We don't have to." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small detonation charge. Lena's eyes widened. "Ethan." Too late. He tossed it behind them, and boom. The explosion rocked the alleyway, sending debris collapsing between them and their pursuers. Lena stared at him. That was reckless. Ethan grinned. That was awesome. A dangerous alliance. They didn't stop running until they reached the edge of the market district, near a rundown shipyard. Ethan leaned against a metal wall, panting. "Okay, that was fun." Lena glared. "We can't keep doing this. We need allies." Ethan looked around. "On this planet, who's gonna help us?" A deep, gravelly voice answered behind them. "I might." Ethan and Lena spun around. A towering alien stood in the shadows, his arms crossed. His battle-scarred armor was dented, but his piercing red eyes were sharp. A massive plasma rifle was strapped to his back. Ethan's stomach twisted. Oh, fantastic. Another bounty hunter. The alien stepped forward, but he wasn't holding a weapon. "No bounty hunter," he said. "I have a different interest in Lena." Lena narrowed her eyes. "And who the hell are you?" The alien smirked. "The only one who can get you off this planet alive." Ethan's big decision. The tall alien, Corin, as he introduced himself, stared at them with an intensity that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He wasn't like the typical bounty hunter or thug that roamed Vexenine. His battle-worn armor seemed almost ceremonial, like it had a deeper meaning. Lena's eyes narrowed. "I don't trust him." Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. If they stayed here, they would be surrounded by enemies, both the Empire's forces and the bounty hunters. This might be their only shot at escaping the planet alive. Corin grinned, his sharp teeth visible in the dim light. "I understand your hesitation. You're not wrong to question me, but I assure you, I'm not here to capture you, Princess." Lena tensed, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Then what do you want? Corin stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low rumble. I have access to a ship that can take you far from here. It's hidden on a black market station in orbit, and no one there cares about your bounty. But we need to move quickly. There's a warship on its way. How do you know that? Ethan interrupted, his gaze locked on the alien. Corin's red eyes flickered. Because the Empire doesn't give up. And they're tracking you, Princess. Your father's enemies will stop at nothing to find you. Ethan felt a sense of urgency in the alien's words. The stakes were higher than ever. Okay, we need to go. Now. Lena, still skeptical, took a deep breath. But how do we know we can trust you? You're offering us a way out, but what do you want in return? Corin's expression softened slightly. What I want is to see the Elith Empire fall. If you want to survive, you'll need to ally with me. Ethan glanced at Lena. The Empire is out for your head, and this guy has a way off the planet. What's the plan, Princess? Do we trust him or not? Lena bit her lip. The weight of her decision was heavy. We don't have many options. The Empire will track us down no matter where we go. She looked back at Corin. You better not be lying to me. Corin's grin widened. You'll see. The station is only a few hours away. But we'll need to move fast. The bounty hunters will be on us the moment they see our ship leaving. Ethan looked at Lena, and then at Corin, who was already walking toward the edge of the alley. We're all in this together, then. Corin nodded. Exactly. Now follow me. Racing against time. They made their way through the back alleys of Vexa 9, ducking into hidden side streets to avoid detection. Ethan kept his hand on his blaster, ever watchful for any sign of trouble. Lena walked beside him, her posture tense as she constantly scanned their surroundings. Despite their speed, Ethan felt a creeping sense of dread. The warship was coming, and if they didn't get to that station soon, they would be cornered. Corin led them to an old, abandoned industrial area on the edge of the market. The buildings were rusted and falling apart, but hidden inside one of the warehouses was a small hangar. Here, Corin said, pressing a button on the wall. The metal doors slid open with a screech, revealing a sleek, military-grade transport ship. It looked like it had seen better days, but the sturdiness was undeniable. Lena's eyes widened. This is our escape. Corin nodded. Yes, we'll be in the air in minutes, but you need to understand something. He turned toward Ethan and Lena, his gaze serious. The moment we take off, we'll be marked by the Empire's tracking systems. They'll know we're gone. Ethan clenched his fists. So we're not out of danger yet. No, Corin replied. But we will be once we reach the station. No one can trace us there, not even the Empire. Lena hesitated, then climbed into the ship. Let's go. The chase begins again. The ship roared to life, its engines blasting a low hum as it lifted off. As they cleared the atmosphere, Ethan glanced out the window at Vexa 9 below. The chaotic, bustling planet seemed so far away now, but in reality, they were just beginning the real fight. Corin was at the controls, his movements precise. We're heading for the Black Nebula Station, an old pirate hub. There are enough smugglers, mercenaries, and outsiders there to ensure we stay hidden for a while. Ethan took a deep breath. Sounds like paradise compared to this. I wouldn't call it that, Corin muttered, his voice grim. But it's our best shot. Suddenly, the ship's radar blared, and Corin's eyes flickered to the screen. They've detected us. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Already, we just left the planet. Corin swore under his breath. They must have sent a ship to patrol the system. We don't have much time. Lena's expression hardened. Then let's make it count. Corin pushed the throttle forward, sending the ship into a steep climb. Behind them, a small fleet of Imperial ships appeared from the shadows, their engines glowing ominously. Ethan's mind raced. What now? We're outgunned here. We need to outrun them, Corin said, his voice steady. "There's a stealth zone in the asteroid belt that will give us cover, but we need to get there fast." The ship shuddered as laser blasts zipped past, striking the hull. One of the blasts hit the rear engine, sending a jolt through the ship. "Damn it," Corin shouted. "Hold on." The ship dipped and dove through the asteroid field, weaving in and out of massive rocks. But the Imperial ships were relentless, their targeting systems locking onto the ship every time it made a sharp turn. Ethan's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of his seat. "We're gonna dive. We don't shake them." Lena shot him a look. "Stay calm. I'll help." Her hands glowed bright blue, and the ship's systems flickered in response. She extended her arms, and suddenly the ship's shields flared up, glowing with a faint blue energy. Corin grinned. "Nice. That'll buy us some time." Ethan wasn't so sure. More ships were closing in, their cannons powering up. They couldn't hold out forever. A moment of reckoning. Corin yanked the controls, taking the ship into a dangerous dive toward an asteroid cluster. "Stay with me, both of you. We'll make it." The ship tumbled through space, the asteroid field growing thicker. The Imperial ships followed closely, firing relentlessly. Ethan glanced at Lena, her face glowing with concentration. "You have to keep those shields up. We can't take another hit." Lena nodded, sweat trickling down her face. "I know." They were nearly through the field when a massive explosion rocked the ship. Ethan was thrown forward, his vision momentarily blinded by the flash. "We're not going to make it," Ethan shouted. Corin cursed. "We will, but we need to decide. Now." Ethan looked at Lena. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw the weight of the choice in her gaze. "You don't have to stay with me," she said softly. "You can leave." Ethan shook his head. "Not an option." Lena's gaze softened. "Then we make our stand." The final stand. The ship's hull groaned as it passed through the densest part of the asteroid field. Ethan gripped the armrests of his seat, knuckles white, his stomach flipping with each sudden roll and dive. The Imperial fleet was relentless, their glowing plasma bolts searing the darkness around them. "We're not losing them," Ethan shouted over the alarms. Corin kept his hand steady on the controls, his red eyes scanning every sensor. "I need time to get us to that shadow field. Once we're in, they can't trace us." Lena, her glowing hands hovering over the ship's console, gave a weak nod. She'd been channeling her energy into the shields, keeping them alive through hit after hit. But even her power wasn't limitless. "I can't hold this much longer," she admitted, her voice strained. Ethan glanced at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "You can't just turn it off. They'll rip us apart." Lena met his gaze. "We need another option." Corin frowned. "There isn't one. The field's a minute away. We hold until then." Ethan slammed his fist down on the armrest. "A minute might as well be a lifetime. They'll have us in pieces before we get there." Corin hesitated for the first time. "If you have a better idea, human, now's the time." Ethan stared at the flashing controls, at the readouts showing the ship's shields weakening, their engines on the verge of failure. His mind raced, searching for anything that might buy them a few more seconds. And then it hit him. "The cargo bay," Ethan said. Lena and Corin turned to him. "What about it?" Lena asked, her breathing labored. "We're carrying a load of scrap, right? Metal and junk we picked up on Vexa 9. Corin nodded slowly. "What are you thinking?" Ethan stood up, bracing himself as the ship shuddered under another impact. "Dump it. All of it. The debris will slow them down, maybe even damage their ships. It's not a long shot. It's our only shot." Corin hesitated for a moment, then growled, "Do it." Ethan ran to the cargo control panel. He slammed the override and yanked the lever, opening the bay doors. In an instant, tons of jagged scrap and broken machinery spilled out into the void. The bounty hunters, moving too fast to react, plowed straight into the metal storm. The comms lit up with panicked voices as ships veered off course, colliding with debris. One ship's thruster exploded, spinning it wildly into another. Ethan hurried back to his seat. That should slow them down. Lena gave a faint smile. You're full of surprises. Yeah, well, let's hope I have one more. Ethan strapped himself in as the ship surged forward, Corin guiding them into the shadow field. The shadow field. As they crossed into the dense cluster of asteroids and cosmic dust, the ship's systems shifted to stealth mode. The lights dimmed, the engines quieted, and the radar signals disappeared into the surrounding interference. Corin sighed in relief. We're invisible. They can't follow us here. Lena slumped back in her seat, the glow in her hands fading. We made it. Ethan shook his head, still on edge. For now. But they'll be waiting. You know that, right? Corin turned, his expression grim. That's why we have to be ready. There's only one way to end this. Ethan stared at him. End this? You mean? Lena cut in. He's right. They won't stop hunting me until there's no one left to send after me. We have to make a stand. Ethan blinked. You mean, take them on? All of them? That's insane. Lena's voice was calm, but her words were heavy with conviction. If we don't fight now, they'll never stop. We'll always be running. Ethan, this is our chance to end it, for good. He looked at her, then at Corin, who nodded in agreement. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Fine, but I have one condition. Lena raised an eyebrow. What is it? Ethan grinned, though it was tinged with mirrors. We go down fighting. If this is the end, we make it one hell of a fight. The final battle. The ship emerged from the shadow field, its systems reactivating. Before them lay a vast expanse of empty space, a perfect battleground. The Imperial fleet was waiting. Dozens of ships, armed to the teeth, hovered like predators around a wounded animal. Ethan's hands tightened on the controls. Looks like they brought everyone. Lena stood, her eyes glowing once again. Then let's show them why they should be afraid. Corin growled with approval. My kind of princess. Ethan's voice was steady, but inside, his heart raced. All right, Lena, give me as much shield power as you can. Corin, get ready to fire every weapon we have. We hit them hard and fast. The ship surged forward, its weapons blazing. Explosions lit up the darkness as they cut through the Imperial ships with a ferocity none of them expected. Lena's powers strengthened the shields, deflecting incoming fire. Corin's precision with the ship's cannons was unmatched. For every hit they took, they gave back more. One by one, the Imperial ships fell. But the enemy was relentless. Ethan felt the ship shudder as a blast tore through their rear thruster. Alarms blared, warning of critical damage. Shields failing. Lena shouted. Corin roared, firing another volley. Then we make these last shots count. The ship shook violently as another blast hit. Ethan's vision blurred, his ears ringing. But he held onto the controls, refusing to give up. Then he heard Lena's voice, calm, steady, and resolute. Ethan, Corin, thank you. Before he could respond, a blinding light enveloped the ship. Lena's energy exploded outward, engulfing the Imperial fleet in a massive wave of glowing blue power. The enemy ships stopped firing, their systems failing as they were caught in the pulse. One by one, the Imperial vessels collapsed under the strain, their weapons useless, their engines dead. When the light faded, silence filled the void. Ethan blinked, his hands trembling. What just? Lena, exhausted but alive, looked at him with a faint smile. They won't be hunting us anymore. Corin chuckled, his voice rough but approving. You just changed everything, princess. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. So, we're free. Lena nodded. For now. Ethan leaned back, a tired grin spreading across his face. I'll take it. The ship floated in the quiet of space, battered but victorious, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they could finally breathe.